The Home Pros Radio Show.
I'm Tommy Donovan, and this is the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. Thank you for joining us. Our RIC Home Inspections Photo from the Field is a weekly feature on our show where we like to share images from home inspections that strike up a good conversation. These images can be informative, shocking, and even funny. One week we shared a photo of a laundry room and asked our Facebook community if they could spot the two potentially hazardous conditions that were present in the photo. Interestingly enough, we had a number of good responses, but none of them addressed the two hazards that were in the room. This photo is included in the show description of this podcast. Take a moment to download and review this photo to see if you can identify the issues that we're looking for. Needless to say, this photo did its part with spurring on an important safety discussion and, even further, helped to illustrate why every homeowner should enlist the guidance of their local home inspector. The RIC Home Inspections Photos from the Field.
What are you looking at? I know what I'm doing.
Did you see that? And so, have you had a chance to see that photo from the field, which we posted? I think it went out on Thursday. It was a photo of a picture that we took I took on a laundry room on Monday, actually. It was something that we just did this week. I shared with the homeowner some recommendations as far as the configuration of this laundry room. I said, have you thought about these items? And he was like, no, I never knew that. And it was funny because he sounded so apologetic, like, oh, I feel so stupid. And I'm like, don't feel stupid, because who else is going to mention these things to you? Now, we've had some guesses. I asked basically, can you find the two potential hazards involved with this laundry room? And I actually had some good answers come across Facebook from folks who suggested anything from the outlet next to the washer hookups not being GFCI protected, which is for many years hasn't been required. I actually put in there, if you're not going to GFCI protect it, it might be a good idea to have instead of a duplex outlet, have just a single outlet. Right?
Yeah, because if you put a dedicated receptacle, single receptacle, then there's not the possibility of using it as a convenience receptacle. So it's not like you're plugging and unplugging things on a regular basis. That would be one of the ways to repair that.
Mm-hmm. So I think nowadays they've added GFCI protection to that location. Also, another listener who actually mentioned that, hey, that water heater does not have an expansion tank, which is true. We had all clear plumbing on where we were talking about the importance of expansion tanks, which are now required by code, but this is an older home, so we can make that recommendation, but it's not necessarily a requirement for this particular house in a real estate transaction.
Yeah, as the codes change, anytime we get an older picture, because the codes are changing constantly, so we can always find other things that are new codes that aren't in the pictures, because things are constantly changing as they figure out. As anything's figured out, they just add it on to the code.
We had a listener who suggested a really good observation that even I did not notice. Mm-hmm. There's CPVC lines going into the water heater. Technically you should have 18 inches of metal pipe, whether it's copper or galvanized or something solid, extending from the water heater connections before you transfer into a CPVC or PEX type of material like we have there. And then, of course, we had a listener who suggested braided steel lines on the washing machine, which, it's funny. I figured that everyone knows that, but the more I look, when I think about it, I notice rubber hoses on washing machine lines.
Yeah.
But the point I'm getting to with this is building physics. One of the things we look at as home inspectors is how is air moving through the home? And the biggest issue here is that we have a dryer that's in the same room as a water heater. What kind of problem does that cause? Well, folks, if you've got your dryer running, that's doing nothing but taking air from the room and pushing it outside. So you're taking, because you're trying to heat up your clothes, warm them up, and get that moisture out. You blow that out through just basically blowing air out of the room after you've heated it up. The issue here is that creates a negative pressure in your laundry room. If you've got a water heater there or any other type of gas appliance, what's going to happen is once that air is expelled, we're going to need makeup air from somewhere else. Air is just like water. If it pours out one area, it's going to come in from another. And in this particular case, where is this laundry room? Assuming that everything else in this room is closed, even the door, the air that this dryer is going to use is going to be coming from the exhaust of the water heater, because air is just like, again, water. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. So it's going to be drawing air into the room through the water heater, which is obviously going to cause a backdrafting situation, and it can draw carbon monoxide from the water heater into the room. So if you're running the dryer and you decide, well, while I'm here, I'm going to iron some clothes or do whatever, and you start getting sleepy or dizzy in the room, you may not wake up. So what we need to do in a case like this is provide some sort of fresh air source. So that's the number one. That would be the most significant issue with this particular configuration. What we need is, thankfully, this homeowner had no door between this laundry room and the kitchen, so we've got a decent amount of combustion air coming in from the kitchen. At the very least, you would want a louvered door. That's why sometimes, folks, if you've got a water heater in a closet inside your home, that's why that door is louvered as opposed to a solid door. And I just told the homeowner, hey, this room has a window. Just as you're running this dryer until you sell this house, go ahead and just open the window whenever you're using it just to be safe. The other issue with this laundry room is that water heater sitting on the floor. Now, if it was electric, who cares? But with this being a gas water heater, we need to elevate it off the floor, especially in garages or even laundry rooms, just simply because of the fact that we want that burner located where?
Off the floor.
But, or I should say, why? Why? I didn't really phrase that question right.
It was easy to answer.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because we just gave the answer. But why is that? The interesting thing about building requirements is the fact that there's a reason for all of these things.
Is it because the gas is heavier than the air? Gas
and combustible fumes are heavier than air. Which means that if we're elevating the burner on that water heater or furnace or whatever, what we're ensuring is the fact that if somebody's storing, let's say, polyurethane or paint or gas or anything, like in a garage or in a laundry room, that if there are any fumes that are escaping these containers, that the burner and the gas, the flame, will be held far enough away from it. So in this case, we do want, it would be my bet that maybe this house originally had an electric water. This is what I see usually. An electric water heater, and then they decide to convert to gas. They bring in a gas water heater and they don't elevate it. They do everything else, but they forget that. So the question is, how would folks know these things? They just move in and then go, hey, this is the way it's, sellers are usually like, well, this is the way it's been for years. Why do I need to change it now? Well, it's been wrong for years. Should have been caught in the front end. Yeah. Again, this homeowner was all apologetic. And I'm like, well, I mean, how are you going to know these things without actually someone telling you? When you buy a car, you buy a TV, you buy a refrigerator, for goodness sake, you get a homeowner's manual. Well, what happens when you buy a house? They hand you the keys and go, good luck. So that's where home inspector comes into play. Thankfully, this owner hired us when they did to have us. They're actually looking to sell their home. So they brought us in to make some recommendations, just like here in the text. You're asking, is there a way that you can hire a home inspector to come in? I certainly recommend that, even for homeowners who are living in the home, even if you're not moving, it's always good to have an inspector come in, go through everything, and provide that report that essentially can be your homeowner's manual. These are the observations made. We're looking for things like in this laundry room. Where's the combustion air coming from, and how is it exhausted, and is it safe? And those are things that, unless you have someone with an eye for these things or is trained to remember those types of items, otherwise you're not going to notice, because everything looks fine. So that's why I like putting questions out there like that on Facebook, is to see if people recognize the same things that.
Yeah, and someone that looks for these things every day, obviously, are going to keep up with the changes and the things like that better as well. And personally, I think there's more times to possibly have a home inspection than you're buying a house. Not necessarily you need to get it inspected once a year or anything like that, but like this, the particular question that was asked on the text line, it would be a pre-inspection. I mean, go ahead and repair the things now. That way, whenever you do get ready to sell the house, they're already taken care of. Go ahead and have it inspected, see what all's there.
This homeowner's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're so apologetic. And I'm like, well, no, it's not a big deal. I totally understand. I see this every day. It's another issue under a house.
Yeah.
Insulation's upside down.
No one ever sees it. And even if they do, half the people or more than half the people wouldn't even know that it's upside down.
Yeah, they wouldn't even know. Like, and one particular case where a homeowner's like, yeah, my heating and air guy just came out from my crawl space the other day. He was like, he was telling me how my, insulation was upside down. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. I'm like, yeah, it is. Yeah. He's not lying. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Oh. And I'm like, well, it does say on the vapor barrier, make sure this is facing the interior of the home. But a lot of times people don't read that, and a lot of times people aren't aware. So it's a home inspector that can help out with that.
By hiring a home inspector before listing his home, this homeowner was able to address repairs more effectively and even less expensively than if he had waited for a buyer to bring in their own home inspector. Now, this discussion led us into other scenarios where many folks typically don't realize the value of hiring a private home inspector. Like when you're buying new construction, or as this particular texter asks, what if I'm not moving anytime soon?
This is a question, it looks like. My wife and I bought our present 1960s built home. They bought it in 1989. The kids are grown and gone, and my wife passed away recently. Sorry to hear that. I don't have plans to immediately sell the home, but will do in the next 3 years. Is there a way to engage a home inspector in training to go through the house to give me ideas of what needs attention? Or how about just a regular home inspector?
Yeah.
This is a really good question, and I'm glad, Mr. Unnamed, I'm glad you sent in this question. Because that's kind of what I wanted to get to. It says, I'm looking to save money and tackle less issues over the next several years. I'm not moving now, but I might one day. Is it a good idea to have a home inspector come through? Yes. Because we will find those things with that trained eye that otherwise you wouldn't know about. Like when I bought my house that I live in now, the gentleman who lived there was like 80 years old. He must have hired an insulation contractor at some point to put insulation under the house between the floor joists. And when I was crawling through there for the first time, I noticed we got insulation all the way up to one certain point of the house where the living room is, and then the rest has no insulation. And sitting right there on the crawl space floor is the insulation in its original packaging. So whoever went in there did half the job and took the check and left.
That happens more often than what you realize, too. I think I told you I was in a house this past week where up in the attic above the laundry room, which was a heated space, never got insulated. So I'm sure that laundry room in the winter in the past few years has probably been cooler than the rest of the house. It just never got done. And looking in there, unless you really realized where you were, you wouldn't even notice it because it didn't usually when I see where something's not done, it's just a certain section of it. Mm-hmm. But in this attic space, it was like through a Smurf door on the side of a bonus room. Mm-hmm. Once you went in there, nothing was insulated.
Smurf door, is that a technical term?
Yeah, that's very technical. Yeah. It was blue.
I'm wondering if anybody out there might find that offensive. Poor Smurfs. It's not very Smurfy of you. But you're right. It's you wouldn't think about it, and this was probably something that's been sitting there since construction and no one ever caught.
Yep.
But why would that be? These homes are inspected, right?
Yeah, that's the one I get a lot, and that's one of the things that I always voice my opinion on it, because even people say it's a new house, should I have a home inspection? In my opinion, absolutely, because I'm gonna just run through the process of inspections through jurisdictions first. Whenever you actually have a house and you pull permits and all that on it, your one of your first inspections is your footings inspection. So they come out to make sure the footings are the right depth and they're in the locations they need to be, so they're gonna have enough concrete, once they're poured. Your very next inspection after that is typically your mechanicals inspection, which is after the house has been, the footings have been poured since the last time they were there. All the foundation was created since the last time they were there. The entire house has been built, framed, and your electrical, HVAC, and plumbing has been installed, the rough end, before that inspector comes back. So everything under that house, under the subfloor and all that, the inspectors most likely aren't seeing that, because I don't think they go crawling through looking at every little thing at that point in time. So that's
good point.
So you have that entire house has been built before the inspector ever comes back. Then your next inspection is generally your framing inspection, because they want the insulation in prior to inspect, so they don't have to come out there twice. Mm-hmm. Well, now you got insulation up in the walls while you're inspecting framing, so the insulation is covering most of the framing.
You should be seeing.
I mean, this is just the way this is the way the inspection process is laid out. So, if you think about the amount of time between all those, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer to go ahead and have a home, like a during inspection or a during construction inspection done ever so often by a home inspector.
The way I understand it too, in a lot of jurisdictions, what you have is you might have a staff of inspectors. One of them does the foundation. One of them does the framing. One of them is the electrical. One of them might be the plumbing or whatever. And what happens is when these guys walk through, and now we don't mean to knock them, because they have an extremely tough job, especially in this market when inventory is low and homes are just showing up everywhere, and they have limited resources to check all these homes out. But what happens is they go in and they're looking for their particular expertise. Mm-hmm. So what happens with a private home inspector is that we're trained to go in there and look at each of these elements and how they're related, because something might have changed with something else since the previous inspection when it was okay, and it's not caught or left unnoticed. Right.
Another thing is, they started when the housing market fell out years ago. You had people that specialize in a specific thing. Then all of a sudden, the person that specialized in, say, plumbing was all of a sudden inspecting plumbing, HVAC, electric. I mean, they started overlapping, which that they're going to have knowledge in the stuff in to an extent. But, my personal opinion is just, yes, have a home inspector do a periodic inspection during construction.
We have a collection of photos that we'll be adding to our Photos from the Field page that include those interesting finds that we come across in new construction homes. To avoid these types of headaches when buying new construction, you'll want to request a phase inspection from your local home inspector, a service that our own show partner RIC Home Inspections can provide. You can reach out to RIC Home Inspections for more details by phone at 864-235-5505 or simply find them online at richomeinspections.com. That'll do it for this episode of the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. Don't forget to keep up with every episode by clicking subscribe. And as always, if you enjoy our show, please take a moment to leave a quick review, because this helps us to improve our ability to share what we do with other homeowners just like you. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections. We'll look forward to having you with us next time.
Thanks for listening to the Home Pros Radio Show. Meet more Home Pros at homeprosradio.com. There, you can also catch full episodes of our show, along with additional information to ensure that your home is in perfect shape. It's the Home Pros Radio Show, brought to you by Prime Lending, home loans made simple. The Home Pros Radio Show, online at homeprosradio.com or on the radio at 94.5 WGTK, The Answer.